a demonstration of how to use my script to automatically generate the residential blocks required to achieve a particular density for a particular area. So I've downloaded the terrain for a particular area along the canal that I've decided I want to develop. Or you could also just determine the size of the area in question. Then a simple rectangle is drawn to the same size of this area, surface. This is input into the program, which instantly generates a hexagonal grid to the approximate size of the 4.5 hectare hexagon that I defined in my project. And it uses the dimensions of this surface so that they're evenly distributed. Next, we can decide the density that we want to achieve for this new community. So this slider represents the number of dwellings per hectare that will be in this particular area. So firstly, we can go with 40 dwellings per hectare, so that it's fairly dense for a kind of outer community. Then we can input the approximate ratios of low, medium and high density dwellings in the area. So this uses the figures from the blocks defined in my project, which is over here, where the low density was the townhouses at 189 dwellings in a block. The medium apartments, 4-story apartments, is 448 dwellings. And the high is 592 dwellings, so just denser apartment blocks. This is all within that 4.5 hectare hexagon. So the numbers in these sliders are kind of indicative percentages, which will even out to 100%. So they're not mathematically specific, these figures, but they can give you a general idea of the ratio between these three types of dwellings, and they represent the number of individual dwellings, which is then calculated into each block size. So let's say that we've done some research in the area and most people want their own backyard, so we'll provide a higher ratio of lower density dwellings. So next we just hit this button and there we go. These are the blocks required to achieve the 40 dwellings per hectare that we specified, with these ratios specified. So once the residential density is achieved, the remaining hexagons are just shown as green blocks as placeholder, with the idea that these are interchanged for the communal functions like parks, sports fields, schools, energy plants, and transport, for example. And so now is where the manual architect work comes in, where these blocks can be moved around to suit the topography and the desired character and layout of the area. But this tool works as kind of a quick visual calculator, determining the feasibility of these densities and ratios that you're inputting. So there's also another way to make use of these sliders and quickly see what kind of combinations would work for a particular area. So I've created this alternative button which uses simple circles to represent these 4 types of blocks. So the smallest circles here represent that green space. The next biggest is the low density, slightly bigger here is the medium density, and then the largest ones represent the high density blocks. So you can see these equivalent blocks there. So we'll just delete those. If we come back to the slider inputs, if you firstly adjust the density, you can immediately see how that ratio of the green space to the dwellings changes. And similarly with the ratios of these blocks, you get an immediate, quick idea of what it will look like with these kinds of ratios. So perhaps from our first example, if we thought, we wanted 40 dwellings per hectare, but the lower densities just took up so much of the space, we can input the same density, but tweak the ratios to change the dwelling types. So have potentially kind of even amounts, or slightly less of the lower density dwellings, more of those medium ones, and you can see that gives us about 50% of the green space. So once that looks like what you'd like it, you can turn off the circles, hit that button again, and we can see the blocks there, ready to be adjusted and moved around to suit the topography and create the new canal community.